question. Are you a theory to practical person or a practical to theory person? What are you? Hi and welcome back. So, have you figured out which one you are here? Are you a theory to practical person or a practical to theory person? Okay, let's start by defining each group, right? A theory to practical person takes an idea and begins planning. They usually spend a lot of time planning before they get to doing. So a theory to practical person will plan and plan and plan and sometimes plan to plan before they even get to implementing or prototyping their idea. A typical roadmap for a theory to practical person is once they have the idea, they set up an ideation planning process, right? In the ideation planning process, what they tend to do is they will first understand the idea, so they would have a plan to properly understand the idea. It could be theirs or it could be given to them, but they need to understand it. It's critical for them to understand the idea. The next phase is identifying the key details within the idea. So they plan for that as well. They plan understanding and identifying key details in their idea, so the key components or elements within that idea. Once they've done that, the next thing is to plan implementing each idea. And with that comes with resource planning or analysis around planning for the implementation for each idea. So they pick an idea and they start analyzing it. Resource analysis, financial analysis or cost analysis, even implementation analysis, and the analysis goes on. Analysis paralysis, if you ask me. And then they thoroughly analyze each detail within that idea before they get to implementing and prototyping and eventually building the most viable product, which is the MVP or the first phase of that product. I think for theory to practical guys, they believe that the more time they spend planning and analyzing and theorizing the idea, the better the outcome of the product will be. Okay? To them, that amount of time spent in planning ensures that they get a near perfect product, even if it's just the most viable product, which is the first phase. They are quite hard on themselves that they want a near perfect product for the first phase to begin with. Now, is that where you belong? We listen, we don't judge. Comment below. Okay, so now let's go to the practical to theory people. For the practical to theory people, they're very different from the theory to practical guys. They get an idea and they just jump to implementing. So they spring off from the ideation phase straight to implementing phase. Okay? Now, they skip even aspects like analysis or prototyping altogether. Because in their heads, I believe, A, they believe that their idea is perfect. B, and even if it is not perfect, they think of it as we will fix the issues as we go on. So basically, we will cross the bridge when we get there. So as they build the idea and they get to each detail within the idea, if anything comes up, they will fix it or address it at that time and move to the next detail and the next and the next. But it ensures for them that the product has already started building. They've already started building the product. So they just jump from that ideation to producing the most viable product, which is the first phase of the product. They prove the theory through practical, and that's their own school of thought. Again, is that where you belong? Okay, comment below. We listen, we don't judge. All right? Now that we better understand this group, I would like to add that as humans, because things are not usually black and white, there are many colors in between, gray, you know, and all of that. There is a spectrum we can all belong to within the group. So even if you said that I belong to the theory to practical group, you're on a spectrum on that. And even if you said I belong to the practical to theory group, you're also on a spectrum on that. And the spectrum I've come up with is quite simple. In that spectrum, we're going to group it as, so it will be subgroups within the main group. So the spectrum groups will be extreme to very high to medium, and then low. Okay? So the spectrum for each group will be analyzed from extreme to very high to medium and low. And I'll be giving us the characteristics of each spectrum within the groups. So stay with me as we continue. Now, let's dive into the spectrum for each group. So I'll start with the theory to practical people. Now, the spectrum covers the extreme people, very high, medium, and low people within the theory to practical group. Now, let's start with the extreme people. Extreme people tend to overanalyze every minute detail within their idea. Every detail in their idea is important and requires thorough analysis. Okay? Now, the drawback with that is the more you analyze a detail, new detail comes up. As new details come up, they also require further analysis. So they remain in the cycle of analyzing the detail, and they never get to the implementation phase. So they get stuck at the analysis phase. These people embody the phrase analysis paralysis. Sharp-minded, brilliant people, but they overanalyze everything. We know them. Okay, now let's move to the very high people within the group. Now, for the very high people, they are somewhat similar to the extreme people. But the difference is they actually get to the beginning of implementing their idea. So they get to the prototyping phase. Okay? Now, they overanalyze as well, but they analyze up until they can get to the prototyping phase. And at the prototyping phase, they somehow get stuck. Because for every detail that is being prototyped, they overanalyze if it is working as expected, is this what it's supposed to do? And the more they analyze each detail at the prototyping phase, again, new details will come up. So they start to prototype new details, and then the prototyping cycle goes on and on and on. They get stuck at prototyping that we never get to see the finished product. We know some of them. Now, let's go to the high people within the group. Honestly, these people confuse me. Because when you watch everything they're doing, it makes sense. But you never see the finished product. Do you understand? It's almost like, oh yeah, that's great, that's great. Where is the finished product? Okay? They somehow find a way to waste time in building that product. I call them functional time wasters. I mean, the high people, I'm not sure. They kind of confuse me. I'm not able to place them yet. Because you look at what they're doing, and it kind of makes sense. But we never see the product. Okay. Now let's go to the medium people. The medium people within this group, they are the perfect people within the group. Okay? They analyze as well, but they only focus on analyzing the critical details within the idea. So they will overanalyze, but they're overanalyzing on a subset of all the details for that idea. So they will identify what are the critical details within this idea, analyze it, and then move forward. Now, anything not critical, they put that in a backlog for later analysis. That way, they get to prototyping and finally building the product, which is the first phase of the product called the most viable product, the MVP version of that product. So yeah, so they get to producing the idea as a product. The only criticism I may have for them is people who are in the medium level of the theory to practical people are never satisfied with their most viable product. Okay? And because they overanalyze everything, their most viable product is actually a very good version of that product. But they get stuck there because they keep thinking it can be better and somehow get themselves stifling product evolution. And so the product may stay in most viable product version for a very long time. Okay? But it's not the end of the world. Well, again, that's the medium people within the group. Now we go to the low people within the group. Now for these people, they also confuse me because similar to the high people, right, you can't really understand what they're doing wrong. So for the low people within the theory to practical group, they are actually overly critical, practical to theory people. Okay, so they miss the practical to theory people by a tiny margin. All right. Now, the main characteristics about these people is they actually get to having the product, but they will never release it for you to see. So their product stays in the demo phase. Have you ever met anyone who keeps saying, oh, I built this product, and they demo it? It's always on their laptop. They keep demoing it. And even if you say, oh, this is great, when are you going to release this? They go, just a few tricks. When I add a few tricks, and then it will be ready. The product never leaves their laptop. Okay, so that covers the spectrum for the theory to practical people. Hope that is clear. We will be going into the practical, the spectrum for the practical to theory people. So stay tuned. Now, let's move into the spectrum for practical to theory people. Okay, so we're going to start with the extreme people within that group. Now, the extreme people are people I call serial doers, right? They're constantly doing something. They move from ideation to doing quite fast, and they do that on multiple projects at a time. Unfortunately, what that leads to is they are constantly releasing half-baked products. None of their products ever attain success. But you can see that they have a long portfolio of potentially good products. But because they don't give themselves enough time to ensure one product succeeds before going to the next, they just have a long portfolio of half-baked products without achieving any notable success. Okay, so now let's move to the very high people within that group. For the very high people within that group, what I find is they are similar to extreme, but slightly better. They at least have one product that has achieved some moderate success. Now, that moderate success on that one product becomes their Achilles heel, because then it gets into their head and they just go about thinking, oh, everything I touch will be successful. They never even give themselves enough time to ensure that the product with a moderate success actually attains a full sustainable success. They move on to the next product almost immediately, and they're constantly chasing the shadow of that moderately successful product that they had. Not knowing that all they need to do is just spend some time to ensure that one product succeeds properly before moving to the next product. So, similar to the extreme, they just move on too quickly, and every product after that becomes a non-product in the end, because they never give themselves enough time to see it to completion successfully. Okay? Now we move to the high people within that group. Now, the high people within that group, high people always confuse me generally. All right? High people within both groups, they tend to be doing something. You can see, you can't really touch one thing they're doing wrong. You will know that they are doing a lot of good things, but you can't see these good things. You can actually see the products. The products are never notable enough for it to be able to achieve the success that it requires. Okay, so again, they confuse me. You just never see anything from them, but you know that they are working on things. You can see their brilliance, but you cannot attach it to any successful product. Okay, now we move to the medium people within that group. Now, the medium people within the group, they are the best in that group because, yes, they move from ideation to implementation and releasing quite fast as well. However, they ensure that they finish one product at a time. So they see one product success before they move to the next product. They ensure that a product is already successful before they move on. I call them the successful entrepreneurs or doers within that group because they ensure that one product achieves a sustainable product success before exiting it and moving on to the next product. So they give themselves time to see each product to success, which is good. So kudos to the people in that group. The final set of people within that group are the low spectrum within the group. Now, for the low spectrum people within that group, they are functional time wasters. Okay? So what they have is they never even get to the point where their product is half-baked. So what they have is a subset of their idea, and they go on that subset of that idea without actually ensuring that they've actually fully completed it, and they move on to the next. So theirs is not even half-baked. It's still largely in ideation phase with a little bit of implementation. Let's just leave the low people because they may have potential, but we will never know because they never ever get anything to a point where we can actually judge that product if it would be potentially successful or not. Okay, so that wraps it up for the spectrum for the practical to theory people. Now I will be concluding, and in my conclusion we will be trying to identify what type of practical to theory person we are, or what type of theory to practical person we are. So stay tuned as we wrap up. So in conclusion, what are you? Are you a theory to practical person or a practical to theory person? Or what type of theory to practical person are you? What type of practical to theory person are you? Again, we listen, we don't judge. Comment below. Honestly though, for me, I kind of find it hard to box myself in one of the groups comfortably. And that's because watching all the products I've built over the years, I realized that I kind of dwindle between the medium to high types in both groups. So there are times where I'm overanalyzing things, and there are times where I'm speeding up things, but also stopping at the prototyping stage and not moving forward. So I can see myself in the medium to high types in both groups. And that's because as humans, and that's the beauty of being human, we can't really be boxed in a group fully. Depending on what stage we are in life, we dwindle between different types and different groups. Which is what brings me to my concluding statement, which is we need to start implementing what I call a self-correcting mechanism. This self-correcting mechanism allows us to be able to see ourselves and our weakness, and we correct ourselves immediately before things get worse. So if we find ourselves in a certain type, we can remove ourselves fully or quickly before things get worse. Now I'm going to go into a section I call Debo's Daughters section, which is quotes from my dad. My dad, of blessed memory, used to say, he said many phrases, but this is one that is applicable for where we are now. He would say, at all times, try and always show decorum and maintain your equilibrium. Yes. Maintaining equilibrium means always being at a sensible middle ground. Okay? And as you can see from our analysis today, or in this video today, people in the medium group of both groups, or in the medium section or spectrum of both groups, achieve success. So whether they were theory to practical or practical to theory, for as long as they maintain that medium spectrum, they eventually lead to success. Okay, they're always quite successful when they maintain their equilibrium. Right. Okay, so hope this has been insightful. If you have comments or if you have anything to share, let's discuss in the comments below. We all learn from each other. If you've experienced a time where you were overanalyzing stuff and it stopped you from actually launching that business or building that product, let us know what your experiences are and how you learned from it. I mean, we all learn. Okay, so thank you. I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.